Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge YouTube channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Stage 20 individual time trial in this year's Tour de France up La Planche de Bellefille, and more importantly, whether the GC contenders should change their bike at some point during this course, given the difference in the first 30.3 kilometers and the last 5.9. Now, bike changes have got a pretty bad rap in recent years, with Romain Bardet's not very smart bike change in a recent Tour de France. Didn't make sense at all. And also Victor Campenaerts maybe losing stage 9 of the Giro d'Italia last year because of his bike change. Maybe it would have made sense on paper, the maths of it for Campenaerts, but their execution of it was less than ideal. But bike changes made a roaring comeback after lockdown in the Slovenian National Championships individual time trial. We saw Tadej Pogačar change his bike there. But that route in the Slovenian National Champs was actually sort of the opposite of the route we have in La Planche de Bellefille. For the Stage 20 TT, as I said, 30.3 kilometers of flat to rolling terrain. But the question is, do they change their bike before the climb, at the base of the climb, or at some point during the climb? This beast of a climb, La Planche de Bellefille, 5.9 k's at 8.5%, but it's undulating as well. You can see in the last maybe 400 meters there's a 20% pinch, so pretty nasty way to finish the Tour de France. So now let's take the average GC contender and see whether they should change their bike from a TT bike to a road bike, or stay with a TT bike on the climb. So let's take Richie Porte, about 61 kilos. Now, the exact numbers and power numbers, of course, they're not going to be 100% accurate. I don't know Richie Porte's CDA. I don't know Richie Porte's exact FTP. So don't comment down below. Richie Porte's cousin's brother, mother, told me on a napkin that his FTP is 500 watts. So you're wrong, Lanterne. Yeah, maybe I am wrong. But hey, this is a YouTube video. I'm not an engineer. I'm sure there's people smarter than me that will correct me in the comments, as usual. So just to get the easy one out of the way, should they use a road bike or a TT bike on the flat? 61 kilos, 6.8 kilo bike UCI weight limit for the road bike. Target power 350, about 5.74 watts per kilo. That power seems achievable, if maybe a little bit on the high end actually, given that Miguel Angel Lopez did 5.8 for an hour, but I guess that wasn't a time trial. That was after the Col de la Madeleine when he did that on Col de la Loze, and that was up to altitude. So anyway, ballpark figures, 5.74 for the first 48 minutes, maybe a little bit high. That gives a speed of 37.6 k's an hour, 48 minutes, 21 seconds. TT bike, here's some of our assumptions. They get a 20% CDA reduction from the road bike to the TT bike, so going from 0.273, I think it was, to 0.218. Seems within the realms of possibility. I think someone said, in the Slovenian National Champs video, my CDAs were a little bit too high, so I've dialed it back down to maybe 0.2, 0.22. 2 kilo weight penalty for the TT bike from the UCI weight limit, so 6.8 to 8.8. Now, maybe some of them, I think Bora Hansgrohe have said their TT bikes are a little bit lighter, so they wouldn't change their bikes, but they don't have a GC contender in the mix anymore. But I've assumed a 2 kilo weight penalty. Some are probably even heavier. Some of these TT bikes are not that good. And I've also assumed a 5% power reduction going from the road bike to the TT bike on the flat. Now, maybe a little bit more for the riders that don't ride their TT bike too much. I don't know how much Miguel Angel Lopez is on the TT bike on the flat during training. Maybe he's on it a lot, maybe he isn't. Maybe that's slightly underestimating, but hey, we don't know their numbers for sure. So let's keep moving. That gives a speed of 38.64, time of 46 minutes and 57 seconds. So the TT bike's nearly 90 seconds quicker in the first 30k. So they've got to use a TT bike. Now, if they stay with the TT bike on the climb, 5.9 k's at 8.5%, it isn't actually that steep a climb, the average gradient of it, but it just has that constant steep pinches in it. Now, a few assumptions here. I've assumed a 3% power penalty for using the TT bike on the climb rather than the road bike. That's because they won't be in the TT position on this climb because it's quite steep. I'd assume they wouldn't be in TT position for almost any of it. That also means that any CDA benefit for using the TT bike on the climb is almost nil, I'd say. Now, maybe if they're going 20 k's an hour, using a TT frame is going to be quicker, I guess, than a road bike frame, but that's really marginal. I've given the tiny CDA benefit for using the TT bike in case there are some sections they can get into TT position. I think the power penalty is a lot more than 3%, but I'm trying to be generous to the TT bike to build a strong case for them changing to the road bike. I've also assumed they're going to really strongly negative split their power during this time trial. I think when you looked at Pogačar, he did a very big positive split because the climb came first in the Slovenian National Champs ITT. So he did like 412 watts for the first 20 minutes, and then there was the last 11 minutes, he did 307 watts, so a massive positive split. So I've assumed 366 watts, 6 watts per kilo, That gives a speed of 20.5 k's an hour, a time of 18:10 for the TT bike on the climb. Whereas the road bike, you get that 2 kilo weight benefit, 6.8. You get the 3% power increase up to 378 watts, so 6.2 watts per kilo. The CDA's bumped up a little bit, up to 0.273 again. Speed of 20.5, time of 17:16 on the climb. And I've also assumed the cost of a bike change is going to be 20 seconds. I think that's really unfair on a bike change. An efficient bike change should be quicker than that, but I'm trying to build a strong case for the bike change. When you add it all up, if they use TT bike on the flat and TT bike on the climb, that's an hour and 5 minutes and 7 seconds. TT bike flat, then change at the base, road bike for the climb, then a 20-second penalty for the bike change. That's an hour and 4 minutes and 33 seconds. So the bike change will be 34 seconds quicker. So then the question is, where should they change their bike? Now, I did a little Google Earthing, and here's the Planche de Belfi climb, and I've got two options on the climb. Now, they shouldn't change right at the base, because they're going to be coming in, if you look at the profile, with a pretty good amount of speed into the base of the climb, where they start the clock with 5.9 k's to go in the time trial. So I think they should do the first section of the climb on the TT bikes, like the first 800 or so meters, and then I think they should change their bike when there's a little undulation and it levels off and their speed is pretty low at like 15 k's an hour or something. And yeah, here's option A, where I think they should probably change the first best option to change their bike. I think this is like 800 meters into the climb. You see it's quite steep here, and then it just levels off a little bit, I think to about 3 to 4%, 2 to 3% maybe, I'm not sure exactly. Right there could be a decent spot, and then you can see it actually picks up again the gradient just after that. So I think a well-executed bike change right here gives you the majority of the climb in the road bike. It should take significantly less than 20 seconds. You know, they do have to take the bike off the car, the follow car. They can't have someone sitting on the road, I don't think, to just hand them the bike. But still, with the push as well, they're only going to be going like 15 k's an hour after that little pinch. I think a well-executed one should cost less than 10 seconds easily. But the next option, which probably has a longer section of flat and is a little bit less steep, is option B. So option B is after the first hairpin. Now, the reason I don't like this one so much is A, I was struggling to actually control Google Earth here, and B, because you're losing the benefit of using the road bike for a longer section of the climb, so it makes it less worthwhile. You've already done at least a kilometer of the climb, I think, at this point. Although you can see here, there's this little pinch, and then after they go over that pinch, it really flattens off, and I think it's about like almost perfectly flat, maybe even like minus 3%, just a little downhill right there. So that would be a good place to get some momentum with the push from the mechanic. But as I said, I think I prefer option A. They'll be able to carry the momentum in for the first 200 meters of the climb maybe, and then yeah, you change it as soon as possible, and it should still take less than 10 seconds. Reminders for all the mechanics: if you're going to do a bike change, do not do what the mechanic did for Victor Campenaerts last year when he had it in the 53.11 or the 54.11 in that time trial. Another important thing to remember is that Richard Carapaz should ride a road bike for the entirety of the ITT. Carapaz is only 2 points ahead of Tadej Pogačar in the King of the Mountains classification. There are points at the top of La Planche de Belfi for the quickest time just on the climb. So Carapaz is going to try and set the quickest time on the climb. He obviously won't want to do a bike change during the climb, so Carapaz should probably change his bike maybe after 24.5 k's, or just not ride his TT bike at all, ride the whole thing on his road bike. I assume he'd still be well within the time limit. But let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you think riders are going to change their bikes? I think some certainly will. Sepp Kuss mentioned that already. I actually think the bike change will help riders who are not as good on their TT bike more than the GC riders who are pretty good at TTs, like Richie Porte. I think Lopez will benefit more from changing to his climbing bike for the climb. But if you like this video and breakdown, like it down below. Go and check out the Lanterne Rouge cycling podcast, crushing all the charts. We'll be doing a Giro d'Italia and World Championships preview coming out in the next couple of weeks. Well, in the next few days after the Tour de France finishes for the World Champs one. Hope you enjoyed this video. Ciao.